All right, we're going to do Isaiah 53:4. I don't want to be fake. I'm going to pray. Yeshua, bless this time, my brother. Thank you for Peter's faithfulness that he wants to keep working on. Really, like, it's the gospel. It's who you are. He wants to know who you are. I want to know who you are, Mashiach. What do you do when you deafen your own ears and blind your own eyes? I feel like that's me. So take away my coveting, Mashiach, and use me. You've taught me so much about this word. Help me not to make this about me. It's about you. Help me to meditate on this. And I pray that through the proclamation of this word, your spirit would be near us. That the word of God would be near us. And because you are the word of God, Yeshua, you're living and active and sharper than a double-edged sword. Bless us as we go through these ancient writings about you, Yeshua. In your name, amen. Okay, so we have here verse 4. And you're going to see certain words correlate to verse 3. I'm going to quickly show you them. And this was verse 3. We have choli. Okay, we have machovot. Ish machovot, a man of pains. We have vidua choli, known by sicknesses. Right? And then we have this idea of hiding the face. We have the idea of despised. Now if we go to verse 4, which is our verse. Achein. Okay, achein, surely. Okay, so what's interesting is this word is already going to contrast. It's the first word will set you up to contrast the content of verse 3 with the content of verse 4, because it's almost like, but actually, or a better way to say it than but is when actually, in English we would say, or when in fact, this was what was going on. That's the idea. Achen, when in fact, surely, okay, this was actually the way it was. Achen cholayenu, actually our sicknesses. Okay, actually our sicknesses, hu nasa, he lifted up. He carried off of us and lifted off. He lifted off our sicknesses. So he's viewed as sick, despised, cast as the leper. But here it's saying, in contrast to the way that we saw
he's
him.
taking on ours.
Yeah, he's lifting, and really it's lifted off. This word nasa, okay, means to lift off. It means to forgive, to lift off or lift up off of a thing.
Okay. So it's not on us.
No,
he's carrying it.
Yeah, now he's carrying it away. Okay, so the idea that this is a problem because they say bore, to bear it, okay? But the problem with that verb is it's taken on a life of its own theologically. When they say he bore our sicknesses, the Christians and others can make it mean like he absorbed them, or he became contaminated by it, or took it on into himself, or some kind of idea like this. And that's not what it is. He lifted off. The simplest meaning of that verb nasa is to carry off and lift off, meaning our sicknesses are on us, but he's lifting them off of us. He's the one. We're the sick ones. That's the idea. We're the sick ones, and he's the one lifting off, carrying away, taking off our sicknesses. Now, I used the phrase carting away because of what's coming. So, umachovenu, and our pains. Okay, same word from before. They called him a man of pains. Umachovenu, our pains. Savalam, he carted away. Saval is a verb that has to do with the lowest slave job, which is essentially, in ancient times, you don't have mechanization. You don't have infrastructure the way that
everything's by hand.
Everything's by hand. So the lowest job is, well, you can't read, you can't write, you're not very helpful, you're not very smart. You can carry shit. So they cart things, okay? And it's hard labor. It's slave labor. And that's what's weird about the servant, is he acted like a slave to cart away, like a farrier, like just a low slave. They carted away our pains. They took them away. The emphasis here is him getting it off of us. That's what he did to serve us, to carry it away. And then we're right here. Va'anachnu chashabnuhu nagua. So here's the thing. We ended verse 3. These verses are connected. The end of verse 3 says,
didn't give him any.
That's exactly right. That's right. Velo chashabnuhu. You can hear that word chashabnuhu. It's here again. Okay, chashabnuhu. So it's kind of like, basically we refuse to even set a value, which is mean we set his value at nothing, right? And then it's like they're playing on it, because when they did actually have to evaluate him, this is what they said. When they did regard him, when they did value him, they said, "Va'anachnu chashavnuhu," and we. So this is true of the speaker. So it's not the speaker can't be Yahweh. The speaker can't be the servant. And we, anachnu chashavnuhu. Now, what's interesting is if I took away this word, anachnu, it's unnecessary. You know that it's, you understand that it's first person plural because of how this verb is conjugated. But in Hebrew, you can emphasize the subject by adding the pronoun. You don't need the pronoun, but it's here to emphasize. It was we. Okay, it literally sounds like we evaluated him.
Would you consider we Israelites / Jews or Gentiles, or both?
Good question. Is it we? I would say that because of the emphasis of Jew and Gentile, or Israel and Gentiles, and because the speaker is one of Israel, that here this particular phrase, it initially at least ought to be restricted to Israel.
Okay. Yep.
However, it is true that the we could be extended to humanity, and the Gentiles were present and they betrayed. They laid hands on the servant as well. Okay, but for now we're going to say it's Israel primarily. So we set his value. I'm sorry, we evaluated him as this Nagua. Okay, now Nagua. Let's change the color here. So Nagua is interesting. This is the word right here, Nagua. Right, that's what I just wrote is this word. Okay. It comes from the root naga, and you can hear the oo sound. It's a passive participle. It's done to him. It's saying this thing was done to the servant. It's translated stricken. It can mean to strike or hit. But when God is the subject and this is the verb, it tends to be plagued with, not struck. Because when God strikes or hits, it's an abstract hit. He doesn't have a hand.
Yeah.
He strikes with a sickness or an illness. So the idea here is chashavnuhu nagua, which means plagued. So we could say we evaluated him or considered him struck or plagued. Okay, and let's hold that there. Plagued, as in leprosy. We regarded him as struck or plagued. Right?
And is afflicted the right word as well, or could it be? Does that mean something else?
Yeah, so actually I think the English word afflicted would be better under Nagua. So we could actually say that this is struck, plague, or afflicted, okay, up here, which is helpful. He's afflicted with a sickness or an illness is the idea, or a contagion, a judgment, a kind of, and it's spoken of in terms of illness because we're the ones who are actually sick. Yeah. We're the ones who are ill, and this is part of.
But this is how we viewed him.
That's exactly right. That's right, and this is chapter 53. So this, keep in mind, 52 chapters of our, and again they didn't have chapters verses, but just the content for us to quantify the volume. 52 chapters have already been written, and from the outset, Isaiah's MO is to focus on leprosy as the controlling metaphor, and so that's what we're working with. And then we have this Mukeh Elohim. It's participle mean being hit. Okay, being hit by Elohim, being hit by God.
Struck by God. He was struck, afflicted, and currently being struck down.
Well, this is all together.
Or that's how we view it.
Yeah, this is essentially they're all together. Let's pick a different color here because that's a little too close, and I'm gonna have some contrast. Let's do green. What I'm gonna do is that's our first descriptor is Nagua. Okay, plagued, struck, afflicted. Okay, i.e. with leprosy, and right here we're gonna say 2. Okay, let's try to keep it all together. 2 is it's Mukeh. Okay, Elohim. Okay, Mukeh Elohim. He is struck by God. Okay, being struck by God is the idea of being hit. being hit.
Now, would you
Struck.
also say struck down by God, cast out by God?
No, this
Okay.
verb has more. You'll see this verb in the idea of being beat or hit as a recompense, a punishment, a kind of like striking, okay, a judgment. And the thing is we regarded him this way.
Yeah,
The servant
he
didn't
wasn't
regard
actually
himself
that
this
way. Yeah,
and Yahweh didn't regard
that's
him
how
this
we
way.
view.
But this is important
perceive.
because Christians teach that Yahweh, a lot of Christians teach that Yahweh poured out his rage on Jesus. So this is it's called penal substitution. It's called penal substitutionary atonement. So it's a theory of atonement that says the way that these, and it's Christian, it's a Christian theory. The way that they understand that atonement takes place is God is so angry at sin, he has to punish it. Otherwise, he's not just. A lot of this stuff is built into Catholic theologians. The idea train really starts with Anselm. The early Christians didn't describe it this way. So this is kind of a medieval idea, but it's taken hold. Like Christians today, they think this is true. This is where you get the idea Jesus was punished in our place by God. That's what some people teach, okay? I think that's not, and doesn't bear out in the scripture. But here's the point. This says they thought God was punishing him. They are the ones who are deceived.
Or we.
So that's right. Well, the point is the we are deceived. The viewpoint that he was punished by God
is incorrect.
Is held by the deceived ones. Okay. So we have and we thought he was plagued or leprous, in this sense rejected, a muke, struck by God in a charging way, and then umune, which is depressed or caused to be depressed by God, put down by God. It's probably the best way to describe that. So like muke Elohim, and then umune is put down by God. So we have the idea of, let's see here, 3. I'm going to write that. Okay. Metane. Okay, metane. So we have put down by God. It comes from the shorish, the root, ana, which is to be depressed or put low, right?
Mm-hmm.
Put low, brought down, right? So this is the opposite of exaltation, which is an important theme.
In a low place.
That's right. And here's what is interesting. For people who say that God did this to him, it causes confusion, because what was the very first verse in our song? Hene, Yaskilavi, behold, my servant will succeed. And does it say anything about his altitude? It sure does.
Exalted.
It says high up, right? It uses 3 different ones, which is, I can't remember off the top of my head what the first one is. The first one is from the shor hum, which is to be elevated. Then nisa v'gava ma'od, he's put up high. He's put up high. So they think God put him down low.
Yeah. A contradiction of what it already said.
So then the question becomes, well, who did put him down low?
Us.
Who put him down low? How? And this is what's terrifying is we made him, humans made him his own people, made him fit the part. Mm-hmm. And then they stood back in wonder and said, oh, God's opposed him. God did this to him. They presented him. By the way, this is prophetic because it puts him, it casts him in the role of the beaten, accursed one. Mm-hmm. Okay. And then he's presented, right, to people. So the idea is he actually carried off our sicknesses. This is if somebody has a sickness on them and then I take the sickness and carry it away, what have I done to you?
Relieved me of that sickness.
What do we call the process of being relieved of a sickness? Healed. So the mechanism of how healing took place was an exchange. The servant lifts off our illnesses and our sicknesses, which makes sense in the Torah. He is an Asham.
Even though he takes it off of us, then we say, oh, God did that to you.
They would say that, well, first off, the people here would say, I don't have a sickness, because the sickness in question is leprosy, and it's correlated to covetousness and sinfulness and iniquity. And if you read throughout Isaiah, look at a human being and listen to the arrogant human beings, they defend themselves and they say, I'm not a sinner. Actually, Isaiah goes to great lengths to talk about leaders in particular, religious leaders in particular, how they repulse Yahweh, how they say, how they commit adultery and idolatry, but then they maintain ritual purity according to the Torah, and they say, don't touch me for I'm holy. And Yahweh says these people are like smoke in his eyes or smoke in his nostrils. Have you ever got smoke in your eyes?
Oh, it's irritating
Yeah,
as heck.
yeah, it's terrible, right? So he is saying people who deny their sins are like that. Okay, so you have people who are unwilling to see that they're the sick ones. You're the sick one. Well, actually, we're the sick ones. Not only that, he carried away our sickness. Now, what's interesting about this is there isn't, it seems to be a part of the plan and the wildness of this message. We know the message is wild in part because of verse 1 of 53. Who's believed in our message? It's almost like unbelievable. Who's deemed this thing faithful?
Nations, jumped back and were startled, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. That's another one. That's the last verse of 52. It's startling. It causes people to jump back in horror. Like, what is going on? But verse 1 says, is more positive, even though it's negative. It's negative in the sense that people aren't going to believe. It's rhetorical. Most won't believe. But it's positive in the sense that the wonder of the message is synonymous with Zroli Yahweh al Midiglata. Who is the arm of Yahweh been revealed to? Who's actually seen what God was up to is one way to say that. And so the idea that God is up to something and it's secretive, God is up to something, but the eyes see and don't perceive or understand or recognize what's happening right in front of them. The ears take in sound, but they literally can't decipher what's happening right in front of them. Okay? This verse is saying, in the same way, unwittingly, their pains and sickness is lifted off of them without their permission. Is the idea, without their permission.
Yeah, because they didn't think they were sick. So why would they need it to be taken off?
That's right. That's right. And so this is, right now the servant is being presented as a healer. And this is showing us that this shows us in light of last time's verse, he's misunderstood. Mm-hmm. Because he's thought of the one with the pains and he's thought of the one with the sickness. But we have sickness and we have pain and he's lifting it off of us. Mm-hmm. We try to avoid him and not touch him and hide our faces from him.
Ourselves.
That's right. But he became our servant and he stooped to us. He stooped. He
got to our low level.
That's right. That's exactly right. And then what ends up happening is people begin to depict him as struck by God. They start having a theological response to him, okay? Which makes sense because there is this idea that God makes people leprous. You know, he makes people blind. He says that in the Torah. I'm the one who makes blind and makes sight, makes deaf, makes hearing. I'm in control is what he's saying. I'm king. No, this stuff doesn't happen apart from me. And so when he is cast this way, people become convinced that God did this to him. Yeah. He's rejected by God, this kind of picture. But it's part of the plan. It's part of the plan. The trick, in one way. A better way, the trick is the riddle or the parable, the living parable, the song. It's really the Deuteronomy song that is sung in Deuteronomy 52 that Moshe and Yehoshua sing, and it's this prophecy about what's going to happen, and it's a giant upset. One way to describe it, it's a reversal, a giant upset or a giant reversal. And
not to be whatever, but would you possibly categorize it as an enigma? It's a mystery wrapped in a riddle.
It is an enigma. It is a mystery. It is supposed to be not a mystery like, how do you say this?
Like, oh, who's the murderer?
Yeah. Not
it's a mystery. Like it's not exposed to us. We can't understand it.
It's hidden from us. Yeah. And this is, Paul alludes to the mystery of the gospel, and it's the wild idea that the most dramatic unveiling, essentially the mystery of the gospel, has to do with identities and recognition. So that the mystery of the gospel is, we've got the guy. It'd almost be like this: a Scooby-Doo episode. We find a guy who did nothing and was really nice and innocent,
and put him in the monster costume.
That's right. Put him in the monster costume. But then, if you really took off the monster mask that we put on, if you've ever seen episodes, there were episodes where they pull off multiple masks. We put him in a monster mask, but if you were to pull that off, you'd find this man
as well.
But if you were to pull off this man's mask, you'd find God. Now that's the wild. You'd find Yahweh. The wild thing about this is the identity is hidden.
Hmm.
What are we looking at? Who are we looking at? And that's what this song is about, is what are we beholding? What is the servant? Who is the servant? Who is the servant? It should be what every heart wrestles with when you encounter this. Who is he? Who is this person? So I think we've covered 4. Do you have more questions about 4 before we move on to 5?
I do not.
Okay. All right. Let's see here. And